A week from today, South Carolina will have a new superintendent of education. For the last 8 years, that job has been held by Molly Spearman, who opted for retirement instead of re-election.
State House reporter Mary Green sat down with Spearman to discuss her outlook on the future of education in South Carolina and the transition to incoming Superintendent Ellen Weaver.
How's that transition been going?
Really well. She's already been meeting with the staff. We prepared books of information, but then meeting one-on-one. She's been here in the building, and we've done everything we can to help her be ready to go.
Superintendent-elect Ellen Weaver has established relationships with lawmakers for a role that'll require she worked with the General Assembly in her previous work with the state's Education Oversight Committee and a conservative think tank. Spearman brought those relationships to her 2 terms as superintendent too, having served as a state representative earlier in her career. But unlike Weaver, Spearman also worked as a teacher. At the current moment, there's a divide between many of those in the classroom and some of those setting policy for the classroom at the State House. Are you concerned that once you retire, there will be a void of someone who has experience from both groups here, that it could potentially deepen that divide a little bit more?
Each person brings their own talents and skills to this job. I think whoever sits in this role, and I have said this to Ms. Weaver, you know, once you get here, you have to realize that students are your #1 priority, teachers next, and that you represent every child in this state, every family. And you have to make that environment a safe place where they all feel comfortable, and every word you say is watched. So you have to be very careful. You have to stay away from the rhetoric.
2 of the big challenges going forward will be recovering that pandemic learning loss, and then of course the teacher shortage.
Yeah. What
do you think the solutions are for both those?
Well, first of all, it's kind of a catch-22, because the real answer to recovery, academic recovery, is for those students to be with a really strong teacher, sitting side by side and working together, and it's harder and harder to find them.
At the start of this school year, there were more vacant teaching jobs across South Carolina than ever before.
It's going to take using industry folks, business folks, to come in and maybe teach a class or 2. Really monitoring great virtual learning, but having those support people. But it is a crisis, and I think this is the most challenging situation that we have as a country, because it's not just here in South Carolina.
Spearman says learning loss recovery will require extended services outside school hours, already offered in many districts. She hopes to see some of her other work continued as well, including efforts to keep high school students on track to graduate by engaging them through career programs and putting more state dollars toward improving rural school buildings. We will see another push in 2023 to create a voucher program in South Carolina. Came very close this year.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on sending public dollars to families for them to send their kids to private schools?
We owe it to every child to give them a chance to succeed. And if a child is struggling and not being able to succeed in a traditional school, then yes, let's open up the options for them. But with the options and the public money comes responsibilities, and that responsibility is a report back to the people to how well did they do. So I personally believe that there should be a uniform testing.
After her tenure ends next week, Spearman will work with the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation, where she'll focus on developing leadership among young people. After 8 years in this office, she leaves parting words of advice for all South Carolinians.
People need to relax a little bit and have a little more faith in our fellow humans. We have got great kids out there, and we've got some fantastic teachers and administrators who have given their life to these children, and we need to support them in every way we can and make their life easier by giving them more support.
Superintendent-elect Ellen Weaver will be sworn in next week on Wednesday during the governor's inauguration at the State House.